Okay, team, I confirm we are a go on YouTube. We are now live. The YouTube streaming has 42 participants watching as of now. Okay. Going up, I confirm we are a go, going up to 46. We are now live.
Hey, Mario, are you still there? Andrea? I wanted to bring up YouTube on my phone, but I actually brought up Zoom. I'd like to get out of it, but I don't want to mess up the meeting.
No, there is nothing you can do wrong in YouTube. You're good.
No, but I'm accidentally in Zoom twice, and I was trying to get onto YouTube just to watch it on my phone. Can I get off of the D Rose connection is superfluous? Thank you.
All right, no worries. You are a go. Everything is clean. You are connected only one time, Dwayne. Rio, you are connected. Connection is good. Custom live stream service is a go.
Great.
1900 hours. Gentlemen, you have a go.
Okay. Are you doing the intro?
Yeah, I'm ready if you're ready.
Yep.
Good evening, everyone. It's time to get started so we can get you out of here on time. My name is Dwayne Rose. I'm the division chief in the H Directorate for recruiting and retention. One of the ways I can help meet our goals and objectives is to help get new members and current members, is to offer training that will support the knowledge that Team USCG auxiliary needs. And that's why we're here tonight. Tonight's training is on best practices and the recently rewritten 7001 new auxiliary member application. We have two additional presentations that will follow later this year. The second presentation will be on critical forms, including the 7035, change in membership status. And the third one will be on onboarding new members. For purposes of delivery, we have grouped the auxiliary into three districts, Eastern tonight, and then upcoming will be Central and Pacific. The reason we're using YouTube is that we've never had training audiences potentially this large before. So we're going to do it on Zoom, Rio and myself, and then we will send that to Zoom where we can have a much higher number of participants. I wanted to mention when you're on YouTube, you'll see a topic description below the screen that shows you the presentation. That last sentence includes a link to a form you can use to submit questions. During the presentation, you can even do that after the presentation. The presentation is being recorded, and the same link that you use to access the presentation will take you to it again. And then you can still, as I mentioned, access the question link and ask questions. So let's get underway. Your presenter is Rio Annis. He's a branch chief in my division, and he's a busy guy. He's also a DCDR, a DSOHR, SOHR, FSOHR, and FSOMS. I would mention before Rio takes over, if you have any issues with the form, you can also email me. But you might find that the link and that little form you fill out with questions might be easier for both of us. Anyway, that's all I have. Enjoy the session, and let's get started.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to now share screen, so give me a moment. All right. As Dwayne said, our first session here is on the best practices and we're going to be covering some of the initial contact with the prospect, as well as the new member application, the 7001. And so here we go. So effectively utilizing best practices in HR. Does it matter? Absolutely. Yes, it does. So HR, it's not rocket science. It's just knowing the rules and process and consistently following it. It will become easier as you become more accustomed to the process. If you're new to it, yeah, it's going to seem a little difficult, but it really is a pretty easy process. So, I want to welcome all those that are HR officers, and I want you to know that your position is extremely important. While we might not be the glamorous job, like being on the water doing, surface operations or air ops or, some of these other functions, working side by side with the active duty, our job is still critical because we can't have members working with the active duty and doing all these fun jobs if we don't do our job correctly. And we need to be kind of really engaged and committed to doing that job so we can grow our, the auxiliary, so we can actually really do the job to help out the active duty. And you may find that once you initially go through a process with a new prospect, you're going to continue to be that go-to person for them. They will probably constantly be asking you questions about, how to find different things or how to do different things. And although there might be some occasions you might not know the answer, you should certainly know where to get the answer and help them out. Our HR job is going to be ongoing forever with that new person. So the content of this training is to promote a nationwide standard of practices. And you'll find that through different districts, different DIROCs, there are some nuances and some things that don't work exactly the same. Would be nice if they were all, perfectly, consistent with how they do the operations, but we find that they're not. So we'll give you this information in a format that is standard, but where there may be some deviations, you'll definitely want to check with your, chain of leadership and how to, work through the slight differences that there might be. What we're going to cover tonight is that initial contact, the vital interview points, the application process, the follow-up and the next steps, application completion. We're going to go through that application page by page and talk about some of the fine points. The new application, though, is really nice. It has more drop downs, and I find that it was a big improvement over the previous application. So there should be less errors on it. But we will also at the end be taking questions and helping you out. So the initial contact. Basically, anybody you meet might be a potential auxiliary member. So you might want to get their name, their email, or phone number, and share yours. If you have a conversation, you tell them what you do and how fun it is and the various activities you can get involved with. They might find that interesting too. So, if you're enthusiastic about it and they feel that, then they may want to join. We do want to respond quickly to all communications. That's very, very important. We don't want to leave people hanging for days. If they have a question or a comment or something, we want to be very responsive to that. Nothing hurts, the process more than not getting back to somebody and then they don't feel like they're important. We want them to feel like they're important, that they're joining a great organization. quick communications also goes to the AAMS system. That's the Auxiliary Applicant Management System. We'll want to make every effort to answer inquiries and be available. You'll get a referral from the online application process, and you want to be responsive to that referral right away. Before in-person meetings with prospects, notify your flotilla commander. That's really important. It's just like going out on any mission. You're going out to do vessel exams or program visits or teach a boating safety class. You want to let your leadership know that you're heading out to do that. And that's important because if something should happen to you, you know that you are covered under the insurance as if you were an active duty personnel. And that is in the manual. But the caveat to that is, you're going out to do a job. Somebody needs to know that you were, heading out to do that. So also remember that you're probably the prospect's first contact. So it's really important to make a good impression. We encourage wearing Coast Guard auxiliary uniform for meetings and be groomed properly. We want to set that example for them so they can see, how well we act and how well we, our appearance is. And then they'll feel better about joining an organization like that. You can suggest possibly attending a flotilla meeting or an auxiliary event. Personally, I prefer the auxiliary event. It's more exciting, I think. They can get an idea of how we interact with the public and how we do our jobs. Flotilla meetings, if they're engaging and the prospect feels welcomed by different members and there's activities at the flotilla meeting, that would be okay. But we know that some flotilla meetings they're kind of dull. They're reading reports, and that's pretty much it. And that is not really a good impression for a new prospect. Definitely, if you have any negative opinions of other flotillas, do not share them. That would set a negative impression on this prospect. We want them to feel like we're all one family. Even though you may know some things about another flotilla, you want to keep that to yourself. We always want to make suggestions and decisions based on the prospect's best interest. So even though you'd like to have them in your flotilla, maybe another flotilla is better suited to whatever their interest might be. That's okay. As long as they join the auxiliary, that's the main goal. The recruits will look to you to be a mentor and a guide. Like I said in the beginning, you probably continue to be that go-to person for them throughout their career. Definitely in your interview, when you're first working with this prospect, you want to give them an overall view of the auxiliary and what's going to be expected. It's a share. We like to find out about that, potential prospect or a new member. We'll ask them questions, but we definitely want to give them a view of what they're getting into so that there's no surprises. Let them know about the mandatory core training and other required training up front. We want to talk about commitment and satisfaction of service. There's lots of auxiliary requirements, including technology and reports. In your own flotillas that there are people who are not very good at doing reports or going online to do training. So we want to make sure that this is not a surprise to a new person. We will obviously ask them if they have a boater safety certificate. That's great if they do. Process is good. If they don't, that's okay too. They can still join. A suggestion would be to have them go through a boating safety course as part of the application process. Because they're going to be filling out the application. They're going to do the new member study guide and exam. They might as well do the boater safety course. You can even do a one-on-one with them if you have instructor who can teach the course to them. There's different ways to make that happen. Share that there's personal cost also. We definitely want them to know that uniforms are not provided, that, there'll be some cost to it. Can we defer some of that? Sure. Find out if there's other flotillas, or maybe you have your own supply of, good condition uniforms that somebody has left or passed on. If we can share any of that to defray cost, that's great. Let them know that, the transportation to and from any missions or whatever training they're going to, that's not going to be covered either. This is volunteer. So, stress that it's volunteer. They're not enlisting an active service. So that's why a lot of these things are not covered. Also let them know about the uniform and grooming standards. Although it's not enlisting an active service, they are representing the active service of the Coast Guard. So, while we're in public, that's who we are. Mention ID cards. You could take a photo for future submission and make sure it has a red background, although I know that some people who process ID cards have the ability to Photoshop a red background. For their first uniform, if you have a trop shirt, you want to loan them to do the photo, that's great, but it's not mandatory on the first photo, their first ID card. But you can do the ID card later. It's up to you how you want to handle that. Share the Coast Guard story. We do save lives. Sometimes we don't know. Just by teaching a boating safety class, maybe we did save a life, but we might never know. Obviously, there's those that we do know. We go out on a search and rescue mission. The new application process. You have to use the most current version of the new member application. And it's always best to download when needed and use the PDF fill-in versus handwritten. Some people's handwriting is not the best, and if it's hard to read, it's going to delay processing. A little trick I found is going to the forms warehouse site. I download the form there, and then from my downloads, I then save it to my desktop, and then it will open up and pre-fill working properly with the drop downs. Otherwise, sometimes it gets a little finicky. But you always go to the forms warehouse to get your application every time you have a new member. Don't trust that the one you just had last week saved to your desktop is still the most current version. There are application instructions. It's on a separate document, and that's also under the forms warehouse directly below the application. As you'll see in the screen down here where the red arrow is, it's showing you where the enrollment application is, and then next, right directly below that, is the instruction page. And these are labeled currently as the version 0225. That's February of 2025. Sometimes these are updated and we don't get notification of that. So I'm sometimes surprised, but I find out immediately, because every time I go to the forms warehouse and get the new application, I'll know whether there's been a change or not. So you have the applicant review the new member study guide and take the exam, which is open book, and it can be done online. The best way is doing it online. And you can find it under the Human Resources Directorate, under the new member class along the left column. I've got the website there, and they can, when a new member goes in and they click on that new member exam, it'll open up. They can take the exam and it will email their score to them, the results. And then they can just forward that to you, and then you'll know what score they got, and you can complete that on the application form. It can be done in paper form as well if they are having difficulty with a computer. There is an answer sheet also in that same area of the Human Resources Directorate site, and you can score the test by using that answer sheet. They don't have access to the answer sheet. You have to log in under Member Resources to have access to that. You can inform them of the incorrect answers. If they passed, then it's really not a big issue. If they did not pass and would have to retake the test, you don't want to give them all the correct answers. Have them reread and try it again. There are 30 multiple choice questions. As some of you are probably aware, passing score is 80%. So this is the H Directorate site. So you can see where this is. And you'll see right here under new member class, it'll bring up in the center here the study guide and the online exam. Now you can collect initial dues, which is recommended, but some districts may handle this differently. Make sure that the payment is sent to your FSOFN, and just verify that with your chain of leadership if this is the process that you'll follow. Fingerprint technicians or citizenship verifiers or law enforcement officers will review the passport or passport card, make sure the passport is signed. If they don't have that, then the other options is from the list B or C, which would be like a driver's license and then a birth certificate. That's the most common. You do need to review the Social Security card to make sure that it is the standard Social Security card. But do not make a copy of that and send it along with the application. You just need to review it and then check the box on the application. You want to obtain a copy of the voter approved safety class. If they have a copy, now some districts will do this differently as well. You may have to send that copy of that certificate in with the application, but check with your district to make sure. Some do not require that. Make sure that the new member application package is shared with your flotilla commander as soon as possible. We want to make sure that we are filling this application out as timely as we can. We don't want it being delayed, because that not only delays the prospect of getting in the auxiliary, and they may become disinterested if this takes too long, but we also don't want things to change, like the application form. We don't want it to go to a new version while you're working on an old one. So get this done as fast as you can. The flotilla commander signing off on the application, they're not just signing this. They are endorsing the application. They are also checking to make sure that the application is filled out correctly. They're a second set of eyes on that. So make sure that we put our best effort into making sure that this is filled out correctly first time, so that we don't have to do a redo or be correcting a lot of errors. And in my belief, if there are errors on an application, I do not send it back to the applicant to refill out again. I pretty much ask them what questions that I need answered, and if there's anything to be redone, I will redo it myself. And then when I get with them, it is clean, perfect, and then I have them sign it, at a one sit down. The Auxiliary Association membership, which used to be a separate form, is required, but it's now built into the new member application. And you'll see that as we go through the application page by page, where that section is. Call potential members as frequently as possible. We know that there are members that are extremely motivated, and they may have their application done in 1 or 2 days. And then there are members who may have full-time jobs or they're full-time students or something, and this kind of gets set off to the side. So it takes them longer to get it done. So we want to just maintain that, contact with them, be sure that they're still interested. We don't want it to kind of just fall off, and not get taken care of. If this is through the AAMS system, we want to make sure that we make notes in that system about our contacts and whatever kind of progress that we're having. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but make any kind of contact note in that system. If there are no notes made in that system, this inquiry can drop off. I've heard 60 days, but it could be earlier that it will completely drop out of the system. The only way to keep that from happening is continue to make notes, and that refreshes that clock so it doesn't drop off. Unless the recruit says that they're not joining, continue contacting for at least 3 months. And yes, I've had some people that have gone that long, and it is tough to get them to commit to doing the things that they need to do if they're truly interested in joining. You definitely want to send meeting reminders at least 3 days prior to the next meeting. Probably more than that, maybe a week or two earlier, and then an actual reminder of the meeting 3 days prior. People get busy, and if you've only told them about a meeting, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, they may not remember it by the time that day comes around. So we want to put that back in front of them again. Check progress with their paperwork. See if they have any questions, concerns, or anything else that we need to follow up with. I think just having that contact, that interaction with the person will sometimes keep them going. We don't want them to feel like we've completely forgotten about them. As long as we keep showing the energy, maybe we can keep them interested as well. And try to get a commitment for steps required in the application process. Sometimes they may have trouble with commitment, but let's try to get that out of them. So here we are. We're into the application itself. We'll talk about fine points here. So as you see upper left-hand corner here, we always want to make sure that this is reading the current version, as this is. This is the box down here for the voting safety class. It's either yes or no. I prefer to do yes and get them through that while I'm working with them before I send the application in. If there's no middle name, then use NMN as they're filling this out. For a suffix, hopefully everybody knows what a suffix is. That would be like a junior, senior, second, third, such as that. If there isn't one, they should not enter NA. That will kind of look weird on their name as this information carries through the application. There are occupation code boxes here. They're a little faint on the screen, but there are 3. If they fill out 1, that's nice. They don't have to do all 3. If they don't do any at all, that's okay too. But it's nice if they at least get 1. Very important point here, and this is one of the newest things on the new version of the application that was missed just a couple months prior. They took the height and weight off in a new version and then put it back on in this most recent version. But the critical point here is for height, it needs to be in inches only. So 5 foot 5 inches would be 65. And we don't put fractions or decimals or anything like that, just a whole number. Okay, continuing here. Same page, a little bit lower. Postal code. We need to do the +4 on that if you can. If they give you an application doesn't have it, you have the ability to do that for them. You don't need to send it back to them. I use this zip code +4. There's probably several types out there, but I put in this one that I use commonly, and it's easy. I type in the address, and it will give me that +4 number, and then I just add it to the application. We do need to have an emergency contact. I did submit an application once to where that was not filled out, and I found out at least in my district, that it was a necessary item. So we do need to have that. It would be nice if it's somebody not living with the prospect, but it's okay if it is. You know, a husband uses the wife or a wife uses the husband or something like that. That's fine. Page 2, section 1. You know, if they have military service, you have a lot of drop downs here for the branch of service, the status, pay grade, separation date, character, separation code, reentry code. All those will fill out for you through the drop down boxes. If somebody does not have their DD 214, which they would need to submit with the application if they've had prior service, this archives.gov for veterans and military service records is great. I've used that before. Don't know how it is currently, but a few years back when I used it, I had results within 2 weeks. So I found it pretty good. If their service is National Guard only without activation, then they will only have an NGB 22, and you could submit that with the application. If they actually have had activation, then that is when they would get a DD 214. So you can make a written note on here about having the NGB 22. At least my district, my DIROCS knows, you know, if I submit that, they understand the situation. Section here for prior auxiliary. You know, if they have been prior auxiliary and they're coming back, see what you get about the previous information on them. And, you know, was there a reason that they were terminated from the auxiliary? Another light box here you can't really see, but there's a spot to fill in here, the person, name and division, flotilla number of who is actually the referral or recruiting person for this prospect. And if the members was a Boy Scout, there's a box checked for that. And do they intend on being university, auxiliary university program? Yes or no? I've got a few of those in my district, so I got a little familiar with that. Page 2, section 2. This is one box this time versus the previous application. We had 3 different boxes, so it's either yes or no. And then the applicant will put their initials down in these 2 sections here. If it's yes, that they may have some sort of criminal history, don't guess whether you think it's serious enough or not. Just go ahead and assume it is and have them following instructions here. And as it says on a separate sheet of paper, list the arrest, the charge, and anything resulting from that. If they've got a court document that shows the disposition of the case, that would be okay to submit that too. We want to give all the possible information we can to DIROCS so they can make, you know, a proper decision on this. If the applicant assumes that what their issue was not serious and they mark no, then that could be considered falsification and they would not be accepted. So it's better that they mark it yes and submit it, even though it might be been just a a DUI or something like that, it's okay. I've seen people being accepted for misdemeanor charges like that. So it's better to be truthful up front, provide all the information. If the person's under 18, we need a signature of the parent or guardian. The applicant will read all these informations here, their pledge, and they will sign right here. And as I mentioned before about the Coast Guard Auxiliary Association, that is on point number 4. So they'll just read through that. If they want to find out more, they're doing this application online. They can click on that light blue lettering there and it will open up a link to them and they can read about it. Page 4, section 5. They're marking again whether they're a United States citizen. This is where you would check the box that you've reviewed their Social Security card. And under list A here, this would be their passport if that's what they have. You check that box. Green cards are not accepted yet, not even with the active duty. So I've heard talk that that might be something in the future, but until then, no one with a green card can be accepted yet. So you want to review their passport and check the box. If they don't have a passport, now you're going to one of the items from section B and C. Most likely it would be a driver's license. It's the most common, although there are other forms here on the list that you could use. And then on list C, most likely birth certificate, but there's also different items that can be used. A passport expired, which is okay, then they just submit something to go with it, like the driver's license. So if it is expired, just remember to do that. Authorized persons for reviewing this, again, is a fingerprint technician, a citizenship verifier, or law enforcement. So this is where you'll recheck all your documentation again. It's kind of a checklist for you. You'll note whether this is a new enrollment or a re-enrollment. You don't need to check all these boxes, just the ones that pertain to what you're dealing with. So we want to talk about whether they comply with the Coast Guard tattooing, body marking, and piercing policies. This is a link that will take them to that. Is the applicant a current youth or adult member of the Boy Scouts or Sea Scouts? If they're not, you don't need to check the box. Here's where the new member exam results would be marked down. You got date and score. Did we read the Privacy Act statement? Review the boating safety certificate. So if they've got one, you just need to mark yes, put in the date of certificate and issued by. Well, it could be boat ed or something like that. Did we verify the citizenship status? Check that. If they're prior military, we check the box that we are enclosing the DD-214 or equivalent. If they're not prior military, you don't need to check the box at all. Did we review their previous criminal history? And are there 2 initials on the boxes? So we'll check that. Consent to initial and an annual background check, signed and dated. That's in section 4. And did they have previous criminal history? Well, are they including the separate sheet of paper? Make sure you've got that, then you can check that box. Will the new member be immediately supporting a Coast Guard unit that requires the member to have a direct informational D1 or Tier 1? You'll check that box. and then whether they've had a background check in the last 2 years. So if they've got a re-enrollment, obviously you add the district dates and previous ID number, and covered all these boxes here. So make sure before you put everything in the envelope, you've reviewed all these, and what should be enclosed is enclosed. This is an applicant interview record. You could use this when you're conducting your initial interview with the applicant, or you can reuse this as a second interview again as you're meeting with them to do the final signing on this application. It's a good guide to follow in either case. That way you make sure that you cover all the important points and nothing is left out, so there's no surprises to them. Surprisingly, I had a very good interview with somebody who was prior military, and I went through what the auxiliary is and how we are sort of military and how we do things and how we wear the uniform. And after a year, that person decided the auxiliary wasn't for him. It was too much military. That was a real head scratcher for me. So again, as the separate aux 10 consent to join the auxiliary association forms no longer needed. It is built in here, so you'd be checking that box. Final signatures here be the interviewer. That could be the HR person. It could be the flotilla commander. I know that some flotillas, there is not an HR person, so that default is the flotilla commander. So they'll just be checking that they've, they handle the interview, and then the applicant will sign here that they reviewed and understand and agree to everything in the application. And then we have the flotilla commander down in section 8. Again, they are not just signing to sign. They are signing that they have read through this application and they've made sure that everything is filled out correctly and that there's no chance that this is going to be rejected because there was errors on it. First time's always the best. And then section 9 here, if there's nothing to be put in that, I did not even close it on this page because that is for DIROCs only. We don't fill out anything there. So some additional notes to review again. Applications be submitted single-sided only. There are occasions I've seen some submitted, double-sided, and it's always been single-sided. So make sure that the applicant knows that if they're printing it out or if they're mailing it to you or however you're handling that. My current DIROCs in 9CR is okay now with not having blue ink. They were always sticklers for that in the past, but you might want to check with your DIROCs and make sure whether there's any particular requirements for blue ink versus black ink. Be aware of signatures with stale dates. We talked about how some applicants can be slow to fill out the application or complete the requirements. Maybe they fill out the application, maybe they signed it, but it's taking them months to get around to getting the new member exam done. So if this goes more than a few months, you might want to have this re-signed again at the time just before you plan on mailing it in. Because there is such a thing that if the signatures and dating is pretty old, it might not be accepted. Currently, we only need one set of paperwork. There was some years ago where you had to do double sets of paperwork. You no longer have to do that. It is just one set. I would keep a copy until processing is complete, but adhere to the CG requirements on that. And once your application's been accepted and they've been enrolled, then you can, shred the copy that you kept. But the copy's there just in case what you sent to DIROCs somehow didn't make it. you've got a copy of that application that you then just need to have original signatures put on again, if that's how your DIROX handles it. Some DIROX, as I understand, do things electronically, but for those that have to mail it into DIROX, definitely a second copy of the application is a good idea. Years back, we used to have do fingerprints. Well, we don't longer have to do that, so that's nice. But it might be needed later on for whatever qualifications they're going for. Mentioned already about instructions, now on a separate document in the forms warehouse. My process when I get an application as a DSOHR, I look through it, and then I'll set it down, and then I will pick it up and I will look through it again. I want to make sure that I didn't miss something and that everything is absolutely perfect before I send it on to DIROX. Who do you send your packet to? Well, that's something you want to verify with your chain of leadership. A 9CR, I send mine directly to the assistant DIROX. So it might be different in your district. Little note, postage materials. If you're doing mailing, check with your MA for stamps and envelopes. You don't have to do postage on your own or through the flotilla, treasury. Postage materials are free. Just have your MA order it for you. Priority mail faster includes tracking, but verify with your chain of leadership on that. So we want to make sure that we.
One minor thing I would mention, just recently the Coast Guard can accept green card holders. They have that now, but we still don't. We might get it at some point, and they are working on it, but we don't currently.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I hadn't heard that they are now accepting that.
Yeah, I saw the release on not too long ago.
Oh, okay.
And, and one thing I would just mention, there's so much what the Coast Guard calls PII, personally identifiable information, and there's a slew of that in applications. So when you talk to a prospect, and if they want to fill it out and then email it to you, they should not do that because it's too easy to, for email. If it's not in a government, safe system, secure system, which the Coast Guard uses, we don't normally have that. So don't do it and ask them not to do it because it's not safe. Thanks.
Okay. So we want to promote the growth of the auxiliary. We've had a lot of losses over the past few years, and our numbers have gone down, and we really need to build those back up again. So, we're going all over wherever we can to try to promote, find new members. So it says here, never, never, never fail to pursue a prospect lead. Always follow up. Be a broken record. Ask for the prospect referrals. Never respond, nothing to report at monthly meetings. We should always have something to report. At least mention the need for member referrals. I would also point out that it is not just the sole job of the HR in the flotilla or the division to recruit new members. It is everybody's job. Everybody knows somebody in somewhere. It could be, as I'm reading down here, Rotary, Lions Club, it could be church. It could be any group you might be a member of or any gathering you go to. If you talk about the auxiliary, you might find somebody who's interested. So we want to recruit, we want to mentor, we want to retain people, and retention is also a big goal. But mentoring comes in prior to that. If we're not mentoring this person, we often can lose that because we didn't give them the attention they deserve. We did all the work to get them in. They got their, ID number. And so we need to continue working with that person, mentoring, getting through what they want to do, whatever qualification or, mission that they want to perform. We want to work with them and get them into that. And that's how we retain people. And repeat that again. So I also want to make note that if you are recruiting, you're doing interviews and you're working with the new member on filling out the application, you should be recording your time on a 7030 using code 90C, or doing that through the aux data 2 system. And then of course, attending this session here, make sure you record your time on your 7029 using 99D for training. Again, the aux data system. So their contact information. So for myself, I'm always available for, all my HR people and flotilla commanders and 9th Central, answer any questions that they have on, filling out an application, or, how to do, anything in their flotillas regarding the process. So we're at the end.
I would just say, this went a little faster than it normally does because we didn't have the interaction that we normally do, which we do enjoy. And sometimes new things come out that we want to share. But at the same time, we were able to have more participants by doing it this way. So please remember to use that question form. And if you have a problem with it, you can email one of us. But we would love to hear from you and see what you think. See how you liked it. See if you have any suggestions. But I sure thank you all for joining us. This is our initial session, so we're learning things as we go with it, and we'll make it a little better as we go along. But I think we want to get this consistent information delivered across the hall of the auxiliary, and try to leave a little more time for the DSOHRs to focus on recruiting and retention, rather than training. So not every district has to design their own, but we have one set of it that we can use. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we can't see you, but it was good to see you.
Yeah, understand. At least one point we had 80 participants, so that's great. And thank you to all of you who did attend.
All right. Well, good night.
All right, I'm gonna stop.
And again,
sharing.
thanks.